hours away right now before you can actually get a clear verdict right now. It's 11:30 here. So they were expecting, it's actually closer to 12 here. They're expecting that about 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning is when the verdict will come out.
Also, Gauri, as we speak, Kamala Harris has now crossed the 200 mark.
Yes, indeed. So that is also on the back of some of those big states that were expected to go in her kitty. Her home state, 54. The moment that came in, of course, it changed her kitty completely. It was expected. It was expected that she's going to win her home state very easily. She has done so. But it all boils down to those 3-4 critical states. Especially after losing North Carolina and Iowa, it comes down to Georgia, it comes down to Pennsylvania and a couple of other states, which is, as many believe, is likely to be decided in the next 3 to 4 hours.
All right, let's go straight across to Alex Tarasio, who joins us at this stage. Alex, what is interesting is that Kamala Harris has crossed 200. She's at 205 right now. The Republicans at 230. But the chance of the Republicans winning at this stage seems to be rising really, really quickly with the swing state results and leads coming in with a robust number of votes in. It appears that in at least 3 or 4 states, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia, right? And it's neck and neck in Arizona. The Republicans, by and large, seem to be ahead. Would that be your sense as well?
I'd go a little bit farther. I think that every indication of where this election is going to go is going in Republicans' favor right now. I've been looking for trends that are going the other way. I've texted and talked to Democratic friends and Democratic pollsters, asking them for what the good news is for Kamala Harris, and I'm just not seeing it. There are Republican counties all across the country that are overperforming. Rural counties, Miami-Dade County in Florida, places where Republicans were not expected to do as well. They are exceeding their 2020 numbers, which was the highest turnout election in history. And across the board, Kamala Harris is underperforming where Joe Biden was in counties that she needs to win by between 2 points and 4 points. And that's what I'm seeing in Pennsylvania. I'm seeing that in Wisconsin. Michigan's a little bit less clear cut. Arizona, I'm not seeing enough of the vote in. I expect that to tighten up very significantly and to ultimately go to the Republicans by potentially rather a lot. But there's a lot of ifs for Kamala Harris,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of action going on right now.
Interesting to note, though, Vishnu, Michigan, it seemed that voters in Michigan were actually unhappy with both sides of it.
Yeah.
What Trump had to offer in terms of the Gaza, Palestine outlook and Ukraine. And they were also quite dissatisfied with Kamala Harris and her team's approach. But interesting to see that the Democrats have a clear edge as far as Michigan is concerned.
It would be difficult for the Republicans to sort of come back in Michigan. They're at 35.5. Are the Republicans to 61.7 for the Democrats with 45% of the votes in. It's a huge state, so Kamala Harris clearly needs that. But everywhere else, she seems to be in trouble. I mean, if you take a look at the swing, it's a swing away versus the 2020 result. Harris at 47.6% is down 3.7. Trump above 50% at this stage. Remember, these are leads, mostly a couple of results here and there, but still some time away. The swing is in favor by a margin of more than 4% to Trump. And so he is favored at this stage quite clearly to win the election. All right, we've got Jennifer joining us as well from Florida. Thanks very much for being with us. Give us a sense of the excitement around you. Trump has done very well in this state. Many thought that the Democrats would put in more of a competition. That didn't turn out to be the case. But it now also seems from the nationwide picture that this could be an election that goes Trump's way. So are people celebrating for Florida, or are they also looking at what's happening around them in other states?
Well, really the key here is that people have started gathering here around the convention center behind me. Now that is where Trump's watch party, official watch party is. President Trump, the former president, is at Mar-a-Lago, his residence about 2.5 miles from here. The fact that people have gathered here means they expect that he is going to make an appearance here at some point. His advisors had said that he wanted to watch returns in a smaller, closer group. We know that J.D. Vance is there, Elon Musk, the SpaceX and ex-entrepreneur is also there at Mar-a-Lago. But people have come here. They've come over here. They're lining the streets here. You can see the flashing lights. Police are everywhere. There is an anticipation that Donald Trump is going to come here at some point. The big question is when, and I think that's what we're all waiting for. When he feels like the victory is imminent or decisive, then we think he will make an appearance here at the Palm Beach Convention Center. Inside are hundreds of journalists from all over the world. The place is ringed with police. There are special fences up. Security very, very tight here in West Palm Beach, and everybody awaiting Donald Trump's arrival.
You know, just in terms of where you're reporting from Florida with 30 electors and nearly 100% of votes in, the Republicans at 56%. So that's a resounding win, 56.1% for Donald Trump. I'm just curious to know, when does Trump call it his election? I mean, is he going to wait for results, which of course get declared much, much later in the United States system? At what stage does Trump come out and say that, look, I won?
Well, it's really all about the Electoral College. Once he feels like he has a clear path to 270, once he reaches 270, that is when he has actually won. So a decisive victory here in Florida, and it was a decisive victory. He won by 3.4 points in the last election. He won by 13 points in this election. Now, it was expected that he would widen his lead, but as your last guest said, Miami-Dade was a crucial indicator that he is doing well in places where the Democrats had hoped Kamala Harris would do well. Miami-Dade, a large Latino population. He is the first Republican to win that area since 1988, and it seems to be a harbinger for what's happening around the country. But basically, until he sees a path to 270, I don't think he'll make an appearance here.
I wanted to quickly go back to Alex for a moment. Alex, you know, the same question which I was asking Jennifer. At what stage or when exactly do you expect Trump to come out and say that, look, the path is clear to me, I'm going to win these elections? And we don't have him just yet, but what we can do is actually go back to that graphic of the swing states and just bring our viewers, you know, a summary of the situation that we have right now. Let's have that up full screen on full screen. And the Democrats, and this is the only little bit of good news, Parmeshwar, is that they've crossed the 200 mark. It doesn't mean very much. The Republicans' chances of winning are at 62%. The Democrats are just 37%. These are the swing states which are going to make or break the Republicans and Democrats. North Carolina has been called. That's gone to the Republicans. And everywhere else, it's not looking very good for Kamala Harris. If you look at Arizona, it is neck and neck at this stage. Georgia, it seems to have gone to Trump. Michigan, it's going to go Kamala Harris's way quite clearly. Nevada is not in as yet. And then let's go to the next page where we've got North Carolina,
Pennsylvania,
which has again gone to the Republicans. Pennsylvania, it's gone to the Republicans most likely. Wisconsin has gone to the Republicans as well. So if you're looking at 5 states, right?
5 out of the 7.
5 of the 7, or at the bare minimum 4 out of the 7, but likely 5 at least to the Republicans, then you know it's a done deal. The elections are over, and that's what. And this is the big worry then for the Democrats. What does Kamala Harris have to do, or hope to have achieved from here onwards? With these numbers, it'll be very difficult to overtake the Republicans.
Indeed. In fact, let's take that to our studio guests as well who join us. Ambassador Manjeev Puri, former diplomat, is with us on the broadcast. Also with us, Suresh Goyal, former Indian envoy. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making time for us. Ambassador Puri, to you first. It seems, as per the numbers that are on the screen at the moment, it's Donald Trump's election. We're not calling it yet, but with the early projections, it seems that the numbers are favoring Trump. Everyone has warned political analysts, geopolitical watchers have warned that this time, if Trump comes back for term 2.0, he'll come back with less guardrails, perhaps none. What does this mean for us in India?
Parmeshwar, thank you very much. And wearing red, let me endorse what you just said, that it looks his way at the moment. Secondly, migrants has been a big issue here. Let me say something light-hearted to start this bit. Whichever one wins, either the White House or the Blair House has an Indian in it. Feel a little good about it, I say. Migrants matter, they're useful. Talking about guardrails, yes, this is generally the impression of everyone that President Trump, if he comes back, and incidentally, this will be only the second time that such a thing would have happened. I think it's Grover Cleveland, somewhere in the late 1800s when it happened last time, that somebody lost out and then came back. Look, there is this issue of feeling kind of hurt, insulted, left out, what he claims the election that was stolen from him. And so therefore, going after elements of the Democratic Party, all of those things would be there. I think somewhere he mentioned that one of his first acts within the first 20 seconds will be to fire the special prosecutor. So yes, all that will happen. But other than that, when I look at things otherwise, I look at the Donald Trump possibilities as being more a continuation of what happened in the past. There will be transactional stuff. As far as we are concerned, perhaps in India, general feeling is that we may have a little bit more policy space in the matter, be less sort of looking into what's happening inside here. There might be greater support in terms of the issues that we have vis-a-vis China. Maybe on the issues of the environment, fossil fuels, etc., we may have greater space for development where we are facing these problems. So look, India as a country has positioned itself relatively well. We've done well. We have become the fifth largest economy, where we would be a country of interest to everyone. Having said all of this particular thing, I would say that the greatest number of challenges for people outside the United States of America for a Trump presidency would be in Europe. And he has mentioned this last time too, and I'm sure that would continue to be the issue again this particular time. For us, perhaps a little bit more of policy space, but at the end of the day, we are a country that matters, a country that would be of interest to the United States. And for a president where economy is the focus, make more money, etc., there, of course, that doesn't mean it'll all be hunky-dory. Trade, migration, all of those are issues we'll have to contend with.
And you stick by this, knowing that Trump is known to have an isolationist foreign policy approach.
Yes, I completely agree with you. The Democrats over the years have moved towards this hegemonic America, spread the word. That's the kind of thing that they say. Perhaps the world has changed a little bit. And why has it changed fundamentally? We in India like the idea of the rise of the Indo-Pacific. Fundamentally, that means the rise of China, a major challenge. Think about it. The Western world ran the world for a long time with no competition. And now you have a country which is likely to become the largest economy in the world within the next 20, 30 years. So these are challenges. They are challenges which are reflected in the United States. The kind of vote that you've seen Trump gathering right from 2016, what is it? It's, in a sense, I wouldn't say denial of globalization, but certainly the impacts of globalization. We sitting in India are happy with globalization. We've done well. The Chinese are happy. Most people in the developing world are happy. But the old developed world countries, those who benefited by just simply being there, doing their bit, producing the air conditioners and the cars, they want to know what's happened. Okay. Why the challenge? Why the air conditioners are coming from China? Why are the cars coming from somewhere else? What is happening? Why not us? So there is a reaction. And I think you are seeing that over the last so many years.
All right, let's go across to Alistair, who's been tracking the elections very closely indeed. Alistair, thanks very much for being with us. Give us a sense of what's happening around you. Are people willing to accept right now that it's going to be Trump all the way? It just
nice
seems
to see
that
him
way.
smiling, though, considering the numbers, the dismal numbers so far.
I'm smiling because I'm out here in the cold and we can really feel the chill. And joining me is Kamala Harris supporter, Ajay. Ajay, we've gotten word, as you know, about North Carolina, the Associated Press calling it for Donald Trump. How do you feel?
I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I think we had a good chance, but Margins are close, and you know the window appears to be closing on the electoral vote side, but hopefully we can still pull it through. You know, it's
Okay,
not
so
done. Sure.
yeah, it's not done. You're saying it's not done. We're still waiting, but it's kind of leaning towards Trump. So we were at a watch party just now, which has kind of wound up. But the watch party for Donald Trump, when this news came in, they were absolutely ecstatic about North Carolina. They were cheering, but here, of course, it doesn't seem to be the case. What do you think went against Kamala Harris?
I think the issue about the economy seems to be more than I expected. You know, he seems to have used that to his advantage. You know, in associating her with Biden. You know.
All right, so you blame Biden for this. So, not sure. I can't hear the studio right now, but I'm going to hand it back to you.
Parmeshwar?
Well, thanks so much for that update, Alistair. We will, of course, revert to Alistair for regular updates. We also have with us at the moment Andrew Latham joining us, Professor of Political Science, International Relations, Regional Conflict and Security, as well as Foreign Policy. Andrew, along expected lines, or would you say that the polls got it slightly wrong? I mean, world over, it's not the best time for incumbent governments, it seems.
I'm not sure the polls got it entirely wrong. It was always going to be tilted in favor of Trump, whether you like it or not. Kamala Harris, I have to say, is an empty pantsuit, and she was never going to sway people. You know, there's the usual things. Minnesota's going the way it does because I live here, and it's going the way it always does. And Texas is going the way it always has. She really wasn't positioned to transform the electoral landscape in the United States. She simply wasn't.
Puneet, let me take that across to you. You'd be very happy with what you're seeing right now. It just seems increasingly unlikely, if not impossible, for Kamala Harris to win from here on. I'm not sure this is going to be a landslide win, but it's not likely at this juncture going to be a narrow win for Trump. It's going to be a fairly significant one.
Yeah, not quite. If you're asking me, not quite.
No, I'm asking Puneet. Go ahead, Puneet.
Not quite a landslide.
Just 1 second, sir. I'm asking the other panelist. Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
As he said, she's an empty suit which was put up or anointed rather than being elected, as President Trump was within the Republican leadership to lead, and especially in the time in the failed presidency of Biden and inherited and the continuation by Kamala Harris with no message, no clarity of what she was going to do, but she was all the time beating up on President Trump with no clear message. And with the economy, inflation, immigration crisis, wars in the Middle East and in Ukraine, and what has happened in Afghanistan, it was a complete failure. And that's the reason what you're seeing today, it shouldn't be a surprise to the folks. We expected a win from President Trump because he stayed on message. And if you started seeing in the last few days of the campaign, he was cruising. Look at the McDonald's, serving fries at McDonald's, or making fries at McDonald's at the same time driving the dump truck. You know, he had it. And visiting the victims of the hurricane, he showed the empathy and the tenaciousness of campaigning. And she only was seen and perceived as an elitist by having Oprah Winfrey and all the rich folks raising money for her with no substance to really give it to the American people. And that's the reason why you see a shift in the Black Americans, the Hispanic Americans, as we've seen in Dade County in Florida, and in the Asian American population.
Okay. Puneet, just bear with me. I've got Ambassador Suresh Goyal with us in the studio. I mean, I'm going to go one step ahead and say that Trump's winning these elections, or if not, that being the case, what does Trump bring to India in terms of foreign policy? Does it really make a difference for us who's in power in the US?
Vishnu, first of all, I don't really think that I can give it away like this, that Trump
Crystal
is winning.
gaze.
I mean, I look at the numbers. It is around 209. Kamala Harris is going ahead. I mean, I know it's an outlier, but it can happen. And I'm keeping my hope.
210 opposed
And I'm
to
keeping
30
my
now.
hopes up.
All right.
Okay. But coming to the question that you put, if you look at the balance sheet of what Trump and Kamala Harris would mean really, Trump first. Trump is very transactional. Trump's interest really with India is mostly, it's not security or strategy related. He looks at India basically in terms of trade, economic, largest market, how much can USA sell to India, what does India have to offer in return, etc. Please remember last time also when he was the president, he questioned India's trade policies so often. And this time also he has already declared that he would impose double the traffic on Indian goods, etc., etc. That is number one. Number two, China, which is really the dragon in the China shop, particularly next door to us in Indo-Pacific and across our borders. Now, Trump's interest in China is purely trade related. Most of the US companies, they're leaving China, if they want to leave China, they're trying to leave China, but they're not able to leave China basically because of the investment they have done already, the amount of investment. And many of them have already said that they are finding it difficult to leave. iPhone, for example, is finding it difficult to leave, even though they have come to India and they have done some kind of production.
Right.
Now, if that is the case, and suddenly it so happens that China and the USA again begin to look at partners, trade partners, in a more positive way. How does it impact on India? Where does Indo-Pacific go? Because our policies vis-a-vis China have really been pivoted to Indo-Pacific.
Ambassador, just give me half a second. I wanted to go across to Parul Khemka, the New Jersey State Director for South Asians for Harris. Parul, it's not looking good for you now, is it? Do you accept that it's going to be Trump most likely as the president, or do you actually feel that it's still too early to call these elections?
It is too early to call this election right now. We don't even have so many of the urban centers where the long lines existed, where all of those Democratic hubs are. They have not finished counting their votes. So I think we're all jumping the gun. I just want to respond to something that my colleagues here on my sides have said about that Kamala Harris has no plan. I don't know where you're reading this up, but I think the only person who has communicated any kind of policy plans has been Kamala Harris. And I totally agree with Mr. Goyal here, who does say that he has already gone ahead and talked about doubling tariffs for India. He has already gone ahead and said that he's going to be very firm with them. He has, in the past, he has told us and said that there will be repercussions if we don't supply the hydrochloroquine when it was COVID times. So I think it's very important that as South Asians, as we know that we are also here. We're struggling with somebody who has a very strong, vehement opinion and is looking to be just for the nationalist Christians that have interest in the country. So I'm very, I really want to tell you, hold your horses. If there's any Democrat, the one thing that is that you have to stay awake way past midnight to really see what's coming down and trickling
but
down.
Parul, I understand your sense that look, wait, hoping against hope. But let's just look at the percentage of votes in the swing states. Wisconsin 76%, Pennsylvania 66%, North Carolina 92%, Georgia 93%, Arizona 50%. So for Kamala Harris to actually make a comeback in a couple of these states, Wisconsin, for example, where there are 76% of votes in, she'd have to win almost everything of the remaining votes. And that's the case in so many of the other swing states. That seems unlikely.
Here's the thing. One thing that we've seen definitely is there's a big turnout in the rural areas. And those are what that's the area where it's the easiest to count the votes because they're coming in quicker. There are fewer people there. Let's wait and watch. This game is not over until it's over. This game is probably not going to be over until later in the morning.
Okay, some breaking news coming in. Sorry to interrupt. The Republicans, it appears, have taken the Senate. That's some information that we're getting in right now. That's a huge development right now. Puneet, you want to come in over there? A quick comment from you on that?
Yes, we took over West Virginia, and I think we won Nevada. No, I think it was Nebraska. And I think Montana is still in play, and maybe Nevada too. So I think we are doing exceptionally well, and that's the reason our friend says that we don't have a plan. We do have a plan, and we'll hold the House, have taken the control of the Senate, and we will have the White House. So it's a clear win for the Republican Party, but more importantly, it's a clear win for the Americans who believe in individual liberty.
Andrew Latham, could you tell us about the significance? Sorry, Parmeshwar, I know you wanted to jump in.
No problem.
Of the Senate being won by the Republicans.
So no matter who wins the presidency, this is a country in which there are these checks and balances. And it looks to me like the Republicans are going to take the House and they're going to take the Senate. And from what I can tell right now, although we have to wait till tomorrow, it looks like they're going to take the presidency as well. I'm not that concerned because I think there are guardrails built into this system. I think there are checks and balances, and I don't think we saw when Donald Trump was president the last time, he couldn't get away with whatever he wanted to do. There are guardrails, there are checks, there are balances, and whether it doesn't matter who is in the driver's seat, they can't do anything that they want to do just because they want to do it. And this is something I love about the American political system. This is different from the parliamentary system in India, in Canada, in the UK. This is different. There are real guardrails in place to prevent lunatics, if I can put it that way, from doing whatever they want to do.
All right, Puneet has a frown on his face. He has the right to respond to that. Go ahead, Puneet.
The founding fathers were very clear to have the balance of power not in one person's hand, because we have seen lunatics take over and take a democracy into an autocracy, as we have seen other nations. So that's the reason why we have the legislative arm, we have the judicial arm, and we have a very strong leaders in our nation who really love this country and love the individual liberty. And as I said, it's the victory for individual liberty, and we all believe that we have a God-given freedom and rights. So I echo what Andrew was saying.
It's their country. They have a right to look at it. But we saw when there were these kinds of guardrails, Roe v. Wade, and you've seen all those particular results.
And the 3 Supreme Court judges appointed by Donald Trump himself.
Absolutely, Parmeshwar. Look, the thing is, no one says that you can do what you want. That's not the idea. But the question of guardrails is, we are making these judgments in terms of America being the global leader, liberal policies, so many other aspects of those things. Those did take a bit of a backseat. As far as we are concerned in India, perhaps we like the idea of a little bit more policy space to be able to do your own things yourself, to take advantage of the fact that you are a huge and majorly growing economy. So everybody looks at it different. I fully appreciate the perspectives of the colleagues who are sitting there. Each of them come from their own side. But one of the things is, it would appear that there has been a kind of education divide in terms of what you see. Secondly, in terms of the monies, I'm not talking about the very rich guys with huge capexes from California and what they did, but otherwise the guys who are in business, etc., their understanding and their approach versus professional. So it would seem to me, who has never held a green card, who's only lived in the United States as a diplomat and is an Indian in every sense of the word, stands for India. But, you know, I respect their perspectives.
Well, Parul, many of Kamala Harris's critics have actually pointed out that she has been salient on issues of economy and inflation. Would you attribute Donald Trump's performance so far, in terms of the numbers that we're seeing, to the fact that Kamala Harris hasn't been crystally clear in terms of disclosing her plan, her agenda?
I just have to say something to this. I feel like she has said a lot about her economic plan. I'm not clear about what you're
Has she been crystally clear, and has she convinced her voters?
Well, whether you're talking about, you just said she's not crystal clear about her plan. She has been absolutely crystal clear. She's the one who said she has a plan, not a concept of a plan. And, you know, when Donald Trump went out and said, yes, you know, I want to get rid of Obamacare and I want to replace it with something much better. And when he was asked, what's your plan? He said, I have a concept of a plan. Even in terms of economy, she has clearly been stating what her plan is. Those plans have been communicated plenty of times.
All right, I just give me half a second, Andrew Latham. If we look at the larger picture right now, the Senate is gone to the Republicans. The Congress would likely be retained by the Democrats. The White House is headed towards the Republicans, who already have a big say in terms of control of the Supreme Court. Which way is America headed?
Well, it's headed in a very Republican, Trumpian direction. And I'm not sure that that's a bad thing. Again, I come back to guardrails. These Trump, J.D. Vance and Trump, and they can't do whatever they want. At the end of the day, there are these guardrails in place that this is a very resilient.
Andrew, we are talking about guardrails even before he's won the election. I mean, I sense, I hear your sense of foreboding. I hear your sense of worry loud and clear that, oh my God, let's just hope that things aren't as bad as they can be.
Well, no, that's not where I was going. I was going to make a point about resilience. The American political system is very resilient. This is not Italy in 1920 with Mussolini coming to power, and it's not Nazi Germany in 1933. This is a very resilient democracy, and it doesn't really matter at the end of the day whether Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or Andrew Latham is elected. It really doesn't matter, because there's only so much that you can do. You can push things in this direction, you can push things in that direction, but you can't. The nonsense talk about fascism, I've taught courses on fascism for 30 years. The nonsense talk about that F word that has permeated the American political discourse for the last little bit is, I'm just going to say silly. I could say stupid, but it's just nonsensical.
All right.
This is not Italy in 1925.
I get the point that you're making, that there are enough checks and balances. Ambassador Goel, before we go to a break, again, what would this mean for India with Trump likely headed to the White House? We do know that there is a good equation with Trump and Prime Minister Modi. We both have concerns over China. There is a deep technology investment from India and America in India as well. Do you see this relationship just going up and up?
You know, Vishnu, I mean, we are here at the moment talking about the US elections, because even though it's an election in the USA,
it's an election around the world,
it really should matter to the Americans as to who they elect. But we are all sitting here like the other places around the world, wondering as to who is going to come there, because American president is the one who impacts not just on America or one country, he impacts on the entire globe. And now, therefore, when you talk about India versus the USA, the relationship, I've already spoken about the bilateral part of it, really. I don't think that we can be very comfortable with the transactional president, and I'm being very, very moved here in that sense, that we will have to watch what his mood is like. He's very, very volatile. He could be very unpredictable from time to time.
Right.
But the point really here is that our future, or what our policy space, as Manjeev said so often, will depend not only what USA and India are, but what happens in Europe, what happens in Middle East. Now, if Trump's policies are going to impact on the Middle East the way I look at it, I think there is a lot of risk factor there.
Okay, let me interrupt you there. I do need to take a short break at this stage. Come back to the very latest. It is headed towards the Republican camp. Donald Trump does seem to be headed back to the White House. We aren't calling it just yet, but for the Democrats to actually win from here on, that seems difficult. Live images from a Harris campaign rally to the left of your screen, a Trump campaign rally to the right. We expect both leaders to be there soon. Will Harris at some stage concede defeat? We don't know. I think she'd still be waiting. But now with substantial percentage of votes in the swing states, it looks very difficult for the Democrats. We'll be back in a moment.
NDTV proudly presents NDTV World Summit 2024, the India Century. I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's inaugural session at the NDTV Summit outlined his vision for the India Century, driven by aspirational India.
हमारा प्रयास होगा भारत की सेंचुरी सिर्फ भारत की नहीं बल्कि पूरी मानवता की जीत की सेंचुरी बने.
The summit brought together prominent global leaders, highlighting India's pivotal role on the world stage.
Not just Indians trusting India's leadership, but the global South especially trusting India's leadership.
Permanent seat on the UN Security Council is something that should be India's right.
Canada is concerned, I think there are some very specific issues. I think a lot of people know that.
AI is going to be one of the most important drivers.
It's a very exciting time for India, Indian cinema as well at a global level.
NDTV World Summit was more than just a conversation. It was a confluence of ideas poised to shape our global future.
NDTV proudly presents NDTV World Summit 2024, the India Century. I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's inaugural session at the NDTV Summit outlined his vision for the India Century, driven by aspirational India.
हमारा प्रयास होगा भारत की सेंचुरी सिर्फ भारत की नहीं बल्कि पूरी मानवता की जीत की सेंचुरी बने.
The summit brought together prominent global leaders, highlighting India's pivotal role on the world stage.
Not just Indians trusting India's leadership, but the global South especially trusting India's leadership.
Canada is concerned, I think there are some very specific issues. I think a lot of people know that.
Permanent seat on the UN Security Council is something that should be India's right.
AI is going to be one of the most important drivers.
It's a very exciting time for India, Indian cinema as well at a global level.
NDTV World Summit was more than just a conversation. It was a confluence of ideas poised to shape our global future.
Seat to democracy in action.
Good morning and welcome. If you're here in India or in Asia, in the United States, good evening. We are broadcasting all over the world. And we can tell you it's a fantastic election draw in the United States. It does appear that Donald Trump is increasingly likely to become President of the United States. Still a couple of riders which do need to be issued. It's not over until it's well and truly over. But the reason why we do say that Trump seems to be decisively ahead at this stage is because in the swing states, in at least 4 swing states, which will be the make or break states in the United States, the Republicans appear to be ahead. So we'll talk about those swing states in a little while from now. I'm also joined by my colleague Gauri Dwivedi. Gauri, thanks very much for being with us. I think the question that really does need to be asked is, for the Democrats to win from here onwards, what would they need to pull off?
They would need to pull off very sizable victories. But the important bit, Vishnu, is as you pointed out, it's a fascinating election because the moment you slice and dice the data, Kamala Harris has not been able to hold on to Joe Biden's victories in 2020. She's trailing Joe Biden in almost all of the states, which is why the numbers as they are looking right now, one can go back and forth given how the leads are. But some of the data seems to suggest that she's at 216 because she's not been able to hold on to Joe Biden's gains. You take Georgia, which he won by a very slim margin. You take North Carolina, which of course has gone to Trump as well. Now, all those victories were for Joe Biden, which of course Kamala Harris was not able to retain. Pennsylvania is still up for grabs. Let's see whether Pennsylvania can really change Kamala Harris's fortunes right now, given the fact that Donald Trump is in fact leading in several of those counties. Some counties there's been a delay. There's some paper there. In fact, hand counting is going on, so it may delay the process. But what it looks like is that as of now, it's a really uphill task. And that's the reason why, Vishnu, let me show you right behind me is Kamala Harris's
Let's go full frame
party
across
at Howard. And you can see almost a very empty corridor right behind me. Most folks have actually walked out. What they wanted was a victory speech right now. Looks unlikely at this stage.
I'm just going to go through a couple of the numbers as well. Gauri, be with me. Now, in terms of the overall national situation in the United States, let's have that full screen graphic up if we can. So far, we're looking at 440 of 538 seats in terms of leads and results. In that, the Democrats have won 210, the Republicans have won 230, as you see on your screen. At this rate, the Republicans have a chance of winning of 60%. That's very considerable. The Democrats at 39%. Now, again, just going through this data a little bit more closely, and if we can just have the other map up, the full screen map of the traditional states which go to the Democrats, the swing states, and those states which go to the Republicans. Let's have the other map up. Then what the key point is, okay, so this is swing states. I'm just going to walk across to the swing states to give you an idea of what exactly it is that we are talking about over here. And the point is this. All of these are swing states. Now, this is absolutely critical because there are bastions in the United States which are Republican and which are Democrat. We'll try and have that map up in a little while from now as well. But these are the swing states that we see, states which could actually go either way. In that, North Carolina is already out as a result, and that's gone, as you can see in red, so that's gone to the Republicans. Now, these numbers that you see over here are important because the numbers actually show the vote percentage in each of these states. So in the case of North Carolina that you see over here, given the percentage of votes which have been counted so far, the Republicans have won in North Carolina. Pennsylvania, that is so very important. 50.7% of the votes so far have gone to the Republicans, 48.3%. But there is still hope that places like Philadelphia, urban areas where there's a little bit more of the counting still to happen, Kamala Harris might catch up. But Pennsylvania, in a sense, a bellwether. And if the Democrats aren't doing well over here, it's going to be very difficult for them going forward. Let's take a look at the chances of winning graphic at this stage. The bigger picture, and it's Donald Trump at 60%, it's Kamala Harris at 39%. And if we can just have the overall map also, which shows the Republican strongholds, the Democrat strongholds, and the swing states, I'll just explain to our viewers what exactly it is that we are talking about. Not this, talking about the other large map showing all the strongholds. We'll change that, come to that in a while. But these are the states in blue where the Democrats have done well. Most of these are bastions of the Democrats in blue. They were expected to win over here. In fact, it's because the Republicans and in the areas marked red are expected to do well, and in blue that the Democrats are expected to do well, that it's just the swing states that make the big difference. Let's go back to Gauri Dwivedi at this stage. Gauri, give us again, a sense of what would happen next. When would we be potentially at a stage when Trump comes and says that, look, I've won the election, or when would we be at a stage when Kamala actually concedes, or is there a sense that, look, wait, there's still a long way to go?
Well, it's difficult to say whether there's still a long way to go, but what one can put out from an electoral math point of view, Vishnu, is that if Kamala were to win, let's say Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and hold on to some of the other gains, then there is a possibility that some of this gap can be reduced. Having said that, the other important bit about Pennsylvania, I want to say, I was just going through some of the data. Parts of Pennsylvania, particularly Philadelphia, is very deeply, it has a huge representation of the African American community, 43%. But the data in Georgia is an eye-opener for the Harris campaign. 6% of the black male population in Georgia voted for Donald Trump. And if that is an indicator, then that tells you that even in a bellwether city like Philadelphia, which is so heavily there's a huge concentration of black American votes, and Pennsylvania being a bellwether state, it may not be so easy for the Harris campaign to translate traditional Democrat strongholds into electoral college votes because of how Georgian black American male voters have voted. That's an indication of why this election has been so tough to call out. But at this stage, we probably need to wait for about 2 hours more, then we can finally call and decide who and know who will be the next president of the United States.
Now that's important. Now this is the map which I was referring to, and let's just take a look at this. Now it's a winner-take-all system in the US elections, which is why you've got a number underneath each state. The blue states are traditional bastions of the Democrats. The red states are traditional bastions of the Republicans. The states which are marked in yellow are swing states. We've been focusing extensively on that. Now, in a winner-takes-all system, if I just come up over here and try and explain to our viewers what it is that we are talking about, if you take a look at the state of California, you've got, and this has gone to Kamala Harris, incidentally, as expected, there are 54 electoral seats. The target for whoever wins the election in the US is 270, so 54 of the 270 has already gone to Kamala Harris. However, in many of the other states, and wherever the results and the leads have come in, it does appear that Trump is ahead. For example, in Texas, that of course is an old stronghold of his, that's gone to him. Florida as well has gone to the Trump camp. Those are among states which he's expected to win. But it's the ones which are in yellow, which could go either way, right? Which is where Trump now appears to be doing well. So even if all the traditional blue strongholds are held by the Democrats and the Republicans hold all the red, and as I mentioned, each state has a certain number of electoral seats, so those all add up to that 270 magic mark. The total number, of course, is 538 in the US. It's these yellow states, when you start adding them up, Wisconsin 10, Michigan 15, Pennsylvania 19, North Carolina 16, and other states as well, Georgia 16, Arizona 11, Nevada 6. When you start adding these up, these electoral seats, who gets those, that's going to make that key difference. All right, Trump has won Georgia at this stage as well. So there's a change over here. This should be marked in red. It will be in a little while from now. So that's what the overall picture is in the US elections in terms of the Electoral College and what we are seeing over there. But let's give you the bigger picture now. The overall numbers that we have in terms of Trump and of Harris. Trump has a 60% chance at this stage of going to the White House. Kamala Harris at under 40%. There are 538 seats, as we have mentioned so far. So far, we've got 440 of those 538 results or leads which have been declared. The Democrats are at 210, which they've got leads or results in, and the Republicans at 230. So at this juncture, it appears that those swing states are absolutely critical. But as you can see, it's going to be difficult for Kamala Harris to actually pull ahead from here. The only way it does appear that the Democrats might win this election is if they do dramatically well in the swing states. Now that depends entirely on the percentage of votes in. In the case of Arizona, 50% of states, of the 50% of votes in have been counted. It's neck and neck over there. Kamala Harris would need to win all of the other votes essentially which come in. In Georgia, it's gone to the Republicans so far with 93% done, or percentage of votes in. It seems very difficult for her to be able to reverse that. We've got J.D. Vance now, the running mate of Donald Trump, who's going to be coming out and speaking, and we do expect a very clear signal from him, an indicator of where the Republicans actually see this election going. And I would suggest that we are increasingly moving to a situation when the Republicans may be starting out with celebrations, all right? Alexander Braun, who's been a pollster looking at all of these numbers, it was meant to be really close. Is there a possibility, Alexander, of that taking place? Or on the basis of what you're seeing, do you believe that it's going to be a simple victory for Donald Trump?
I don't think so. I think this is still way too early to call. The trends have definitely been going in Donald Trump's way over the past couple hours, but it's not done in any way. There is still what's called the blue wall, which is the northern 3 or 4 states from Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan to Pennsylvania that traditionally vote for Democrats, although they are swing states, and they have not been called yet. Kamala Harris needs to win them all at this point, which is not an easy task, but it is still possible. But all eyes are on Pennsylvania right now. We will see the late-breaking Philadelphia votes coming in about now. And then we also have the mail-in ballots. A lot of people now mail in their ballots, and those get counted late, especially in a state like Pennsylvania when they can only start counting them today. And that's a pretty long, laborious process. So we have to watch Pennsylvania, and that'll be the key deciding state.
Let's talk about Pennsylvania. 19 electors, so absolutely important for both camps. 66% of votes are in right now. The Republicans are at 50.7, the Democrats at 48.3. Even with the remaining 56% of votes which still need to be counted, for Kamala Harris to pull ahead of the Republicans would need a fair amount of work. So it's not going to be easy. But the assumption is that urban areas where the Democrats are stronger is where she might pick up steam. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. It's also areas that have the larger non-white population that typically breaks for Democrats, although Donald Trump has been trying to make inroads, especially among men. And these districts get counted the last because they're the largest districts or precincts in the state, and it just simply takes longer to count them. And therefore, we're going to see the remaining votes that are being counted favor Democrats. Whether it's going to be enough, we will see. Pardon me. And but Pennsylvania is also interesting again in the sense that the mail-in ballots get counted even after the most of the in-person votes are counted. Again, there's a presumption that they will favor Democrats, maybe not by much, but at least by some. And so at no point I would think that it's possible to call Pennsylvania at this point.
All right, let's go across now to Florida. We've got my colleague Jennifer Glass who joins us. Give us a sense of what's happening around you. I can see lots of lights behind you. Are those police cars? I believe you're not too far from Mar-a-Lago, where Donald Trump is with Elon Musk right now. Are we getting close to a stage when he might actually come out and say a few words?
Well, this is the convention center right here. This is where Donald Trump is expected to address the public. We understand that they are moving people from Mar-a-Lago here. We've seen 2 motorcades come here so far. There was a helicopter overhead, so that might have been J.D. Vance when they moved him from the convention center back to Mar-a-Lago earlier today. That was the formation that they used. So we are expecting Donald Trump to speak from here at some point. But as the point has been made, many of the swing states have not yet been called. I think until he feels he has a very clear path to 270 or a clincher on 270, he may wait. But we do understand that folks from Mar-a-Lago, about 2.5 miles that way, are heading here to the convention center ahead of Trump's speech. There's been a real sense of excitement here. People have been lining the streets here. People were behind me just a few minutes ago with Trump flags. The motorcades went in just over there. As you can see, there are security fences all around the convention center, but traffic is flowing pretty freely. A huge security presence here, though. They have shut down streets here and there. They shut down the roads when the convoys make a move. But very much excitement among Trump supporters here today. They've gathered here in large numbers. They were lining the street earlier, and you can see some of them now moving out because all the action's going to move inside.
All right, let's go across to Natasha Israni joining us now from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Natasha, look, at this stage, it's all about, well, it's almost all about Pennsylvania at this stage. 50.7 to the Republicans, 48.3 to the Democrats, 66% of votes which have come in. So my question is actually about votes which are still to come in terms of being counted. Is that in urban centers? And traditionally, is that a Democrat stronghold?
Well, the remaining votes are actually not only from the urban centers, they're from all over the state, and they would include rural areas as well as small towns and villages. So really, it's very difficult to predict how that will go because it's going to be a mix of different factors. But it is narrowing and it is becoming more difficult for Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania, but it's not over yet. So you're right, Pennsylvania with its 19 electoral college votes still being watched keenly. And now we are joined by actually a young Republican woman. She's actually a lawyer, and she's been here all this night at the Republican Watch Party. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling better than I did when I first came to the watch party. I think you've seen a gradual increase in morale, as well as some of the statistics that are coming out now and the votes that are coming out now. So I think it's progressively gotten a lot more positive.
Now, this is a very close race, but in Pennsylvania, earlier in the polls, you were seeing Kamala Harris a little ahead. It wasn't a guarantee, but she was ahead. What do you think is changing? What are the factors? What appeals to you as well about Donald Trump and what he promises?
I think for Pennsylvania, there are a lot of different issues that are on the table for different demographics of people, and obviously everybody votes for the issues that are within their interests. For Pennsylvania, I think a big issue was fracking, and so both of the candidates went back and forth on that issue. But for me personally, I think it was just a matter of looking at the governing of both parties. We've seen Kamala Harris and the Biden administration, and they're governing, and we've seen Donald Trump. And I think at the end of the day, it's who you believe that the country was better off under. And taking personality out of it, I think the choice is clear. Yeah.
A lot is being said about the gender gap in this election between men and women. A lot of being said also about families where the husband might be voting for Trump and the wife is voting for Kamala Harris. Obviously not every family. But I'm curious, as a young Republican woman, when it comes to the question of having the right to your reproductive freedom, how do you stand on that issue? And are there any concerns for you when it came to Donald Trump?
Not particularly, only because I see the issue of reproductive rights as less of a federal issue, and I don't see, even if there was an opportunity for Kamala Harris to come into office and somehow secure the right for women federal government to do, and it'd be challenged. And so regardless of what party was in office, whether the Republicans came in and wanted a ban or the Democrats came in and wanted that guaranteed right, I think either case, it would be difficult for either party to work on a federal level. So for me, the issue of abortion was less of a factor in this election, although my personal stance is it's actually, I'm more so on the fence in terms of reproductive rights and in terms of pro-choice versus pro-life.
And you talked about how it's not personality that you were thinking so much more, but more about the issues and what you think is going to be better for you and for the country. But I'm still curious, when one of the things that we hear a lot from the Trump campaign is rhetoric against immigrants, against women's sometimes. How do you respond to that? Did that ever bother you?
I don't know if it personally bothers me, and I think part of that comes from the influence of my parents who are immigrants to this country and do support, Donald Trump and are not bothered by his rhetoric. And so seeing immigrants who actually do support him makes me feel like, it's more about what he does and less about what he says. And I don't think that he is the perfect role model in terms of rhetoric, but we got to look at the agenda and what he's doing in the policy.
So there we have it. We are speaking to a young Republican lawyer telling us that they're looking beyond the rhetoric when it comes to Donald Trump. And at the moment, very happy and satisfied. They're still not calling it a complete victory yet, but really hopeful of their candidate, Donald Trump, winning this election.
All right, thanks very much. Let's go straight across to Chris Casquejo joining us from Michigan. Thanks, Chris, very much for being with us. If you look at Michigan, it's 52.4 in favor of the Republicans to 45.9, or I should say 45.9 in favor of the Democrats. No, I'll say that again, 52.4 in favor of the Republicans to 45.9 for the Democrats, with 49% of the votes in. Do you have any idea at this stage of where the remaining votes would be coming in from? Would these be urban areas, suburban areas, or both?
Yes, we have not seen the vote come in from Detroit yet, which is where I am. And, we were expecting it to come in, within the last hour, but the totals are not in. And obviously that would be a huge, it's a majority Black population. We would expect that Harris would run up the score in terms of the margins in this major urban area. But, whether it's enough to overcome that, roughly 200,000 vote lead that Donald Trump has jumped out to, we'll have to see. But the fact of the matter is that it's a very narrow path now for Kamala Harris to take the White House, with Georgia being projected for Donald Trump. So two of the Sun Belt battleground states, Georgia and North Carolina, have gone Trump's way. And now it's really, her path is basically keeping the blue wall that Biden won back in 2020 of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, if she wants to be in the White House.
That is interesting. What we've also learned in just the last 5 minutes or so is that Kamala Harris will not be addressing her supporters today. That's not going to be taking place. I don't know if that's a sign of her just wanting to wait till it's all over, or it stems from a sense of disappointment at what she's seeing right now. What is your sense, Chris, and typically how does it go in US elections in terms of calling the elections? How much longer do we need to wait? Because could we be in a situation where in the next 2 or 3 hours we see Trump come out or J.D. Vance come out and say that, look, we are headed to the White House?
Yeah, you might. I mean, that's what happened in 2020 before the votes were counted. So there's a chance that might happen again. But I wouldn't read anything into Kamala Harris not speaking tonight because, again, those, the votes are still out in those 3 blue wall battleground states. And that really is what the Harris campaign has said was their path to victory. And they expected the margins to be razor thin. So it just depends on how she's performing in those urban and suburban areas, whether she can run up the score enough to overcome Trump's, wide leads in the rural counties. That's why the maps are so red in these states with a few blue dots, but those blue dots have much more, population because they're urban and suburban centers.
All right, Chris, we'll keep coming back to you, but I'm joined now by Rich Logis, the Florida co-chair for Republicans for Harris. Thank you very much, Rich, for being with us. A great sense of relief, I'm sure, for you at this stage. The numbers look positive for Donald Trump, not just in Florida, but across the country. Is it your sense that in the next couple of hours, we could see perhaps J.D. Vance or Trump himself come out and say that, look, it seems we are headed to the White House?
Thanks for having me. Always happy to join you here and your team. I'd be saying the same, irrespective of who was waiting for the votes to come in. Whether it was Mr. Trump, if he was on the other side here for waiting for votes, I would say that all the voters who cast votes, we thank you for that, and they deserve to have their votes counted. Do I think it's a distinct possibility former President Trump will do that? Probably. But we know that it's going to be many, many hours until all of those votes that were cast are in fact counted. So I would caution him, although I suspect he probably wouldn't heed my advice, to not declare victory. I don't think anyone should declare victory at this point because we are still waiting to make sure that everyone who enfranchised themselves, that we make sure that those votes are counted so we can have a final tally and we can accept the results because our elections are free and fair.
The only point, Rich, and I take your word of caution, absolutely you're right, that, let's not jump the gun. But if you do look at the swing states, I think that the key number now is the percentage of votes which are in. And if you look at Wisconsin, 76%, so that's robust. If you look at Pennsylvania, 66, North Carolina, a whopping 92, Michigan, 49, so not yet halfway. Georgia, 94%, Arizona, 50%. So in many of these states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, and Georgia, right? And it's neck and neck in Arizona, but by and large, it's the Republicans, Donald Trump, who's leading. With this percentage of votes in, the path for Kamala Harris appears to have narrowed substantially. She'd need to win a huge number of the remaining votes in all of these states if she has any chance. That's my sense of it. Would you agree?
It is a narrow path, but I would say that a narrow path is not a closed path. And something that may, in fact, actually pleasantly surprise all of us is that I believe that many of those votes that we're still waiting to be counted are some of those single-issue voters whom I've been talking about quite a bit in the lead up to this election. And those are single-issue voters who are actually do comprise a diverse assortment of voters ideologically. They are predominantly from urban, densely populated areas. And even with a narrow pathway, I still do not believe that that means that anyone at this moment should be declaring victory. But having said all of that, yes, it is true that the math might be an uphill battle right now, but just because it may be uphill does not mean that the race is over.
Let's go straight across. Thanks very much, Rich Logis, for speaking to us. Important words of caution. It is a narrow path ahead for Harris, but it's not a closed path at just this stage. But